reception was held in a private hall in the east of the city. As night fell, luxury cars gathered outside the clubhouse, and within their shadows were the most calculating people in the city. When Shen Yuan got out of the car, the camera flashes lit up again. This time he was used to it. He was wearing a cleanly tailored white suit, which made his brows look even colder. The ring on his ring finger was not hidden. Under the lights, it looked especially eye-catching. Lu Chenzhou stood beside him, wearing a black suit, cold and calm. Black and white appeared side by side, like two completely different languages of power. Someone whispered, "It does look like that. A person like Lu Chenzhou would get married to save Shen Group? I don't believe it. Is that for Shen Yuan himself? It's even scarier." Shen Yuan heard it without changing his expression. Lu Chenzhou turned slightly to block part of the shot for him. Shen Yuan whispered, "No need to block it, I am not blind." Lu Chenzhou glanced at him. "The lights are too flashy." Shen Yuan was startled. This reason was so ordinary that he even forgot to ridicule it for a moment. After entering the venue, many people came up to greet them. In the past, most of these people looked at Shen Yuan with politeness toward the young master of the Shen family. Now there was more calculation in their eyes. They were measuring whether he could still represent the Shen family, how sincere Lu Chenzhou was toward him, and whether the ship called Shen Group was still worth boarding. Shen Yuan understood everything. So he smiled very lightly and steadily. Liang Qisheng, the head of Qisheng Capital, soon appeared. He was in his 40s, with an elegant face and gold-rimmed glasses. He looked like a gentle scholar rather than a capital hunter who devoured corporate assets. He came over with a wine glass. "Young Master Shen, I have long admired you." Shen Yuan clinked glasses with him. "Mr. Liang, you're welcome." Liang Qisheng smiled and said, "Shen Group has been through a great deal of turmoil recently. It is not easy for young Master Shen to stabilize the situation at such a young age." "Forced?" Shen Yuan said. Liang Qisheng's smile remained unchanged. "Crisis is also an opportunity. If Shen Group needs capital assistance, Qisheng is willing to lend a helping hand." Shen Yuan sneered inwardly. This had also been true in his previous life. Qisheng Capital's so-called helping hand was to first provide high-interest bridge financing, then use contractual traps to swallow Shen Group's core assets step by step. "Thank you, Mr. Liang." Shen Yuan said calmly, "It's just that Shen Group now has support from Lu Group, so there is no shortage of money for the time being." Liang Qisheng looked toward Lu Chenzhou. "Mr. Lu is quite generous this time." Lu Chenzhou said calmly, "It is not generous to spend money on your own people." Shen Yuan's hand, holding the wine glass, paused. The expressions of the few people around who heard it changed. Own people. These three words carry more weight than any business statement. Liang Qisheng's eyes flashed with a hint of darkness, and he quickly smiled and said, "It seems that the two of you have a good relationship." Shen Yuan smiled, "It's okay." Lu Chenzhou looked at him, "Very good." Shen Yuan. Liang Qisheng's smile froze slightly. At this moment, a low commotion came from the other side of the venue. Lu Wenchuan had arrived. He is 20 years older than Lu Chenzhou, has a gentle temperament, and smiles like a generous elder. But Shen Yuan felt an instinctive discomfort after just one glance. The man's eyes were too flat. He is so calm that he never cares about the life and death of others. Lu Wenchuan walked up to them and looked at Lu Chenzhou first. "Chenzhou, I didn't tell my second uncle in advance about such a big happy event." Lu Chenzhou looks indifferent. "It's not too late to know now." Lu Wenchuan smiled and looked at Shen Yuan again. "This is the young master of the Shen family." Sure enough, he was born well. His eyes were kind like those of an elder, but Shen Yuan could sense that he was looking at the goods. Shen Yuan smiled slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Lu." Lu Wenchuan said, "We will all be a family from now on, just call us uncle." Before Shen Yuan spoke, Lu Chenzhou said coldly, "He doesn't need it." The atmosphere froze instantly. Lu Wenchuan smiled a little deeper. "Chenzhou, you are still so protective of food." Shen Yuan's eyes turned slightly cold when he heard the word food protection. He hates being treated as someone's property. Lu Chenzhou suddenly held his hand. It is not a way to declare sovereignty. It's more like reminding him, don't pay attention. Shen Yuan glanced at the hands held by the two of them, but did not break away. Lu Wenchuan's eyes stopped on their hands for half a second. It seems the relationship is really good. He put down his wineglass and said meaningfully, it's just that the Shen family has been very stormy recently, so Mr. Shen should be careful. The water in the mall is deeper than you think. Shen Yuan smiled back. Thanks for the reminder. You're welcome. Lu Wenchuan turned and left. Shen Yuan looked at his back and asked in a low voice, he is testing me. Lu Chenzhou said, yeah. Is he related to Qisheng? Lu Chenzhou did not answer. Shen Yuan looked at him coldly. Lu Chenzhou was silent for a few seconds and finally said, it's possible. Shen Yuan smiled. Mr. Lu, we have made progress. At least it wasn't completely ignored this time. Lu Chenzhou looked at him with a little helplessness in his eyes. And this scene happened to be seen by Gu Yanci in the distance. Gu Yanci clenched the wineglass with gloomy eyes. When Shen Yuan had seen him before, he had been so vivid. But now, those emotions are all given to Lu Chenzhou. He suddenly realized that if he didn't do something, Shen Yuan would really be completely out of his control. Gu Yanci did not step forward immediately. He knew very well how to take advantage of other people's attention on such occasions. Half an hour later, Shen Yuan walked to the terrace alone to get some air. Lu Chenzhou was stopped by several Lu group directors, who were talking not far away. The night breeze outside the terrace was slightly cool. Shen Yuan had just put down his wine glass when footsteps came from behind him. He knew who it was without looking back. Mr. Gu was really determined not to give up. Gu Yanci stopped behind him, his voice low. Yuan, can't we have a nice talk? Can't. You would never do this to me before. It was before again. Shen Yuan turned around with cold eyes. Gu Yanci, do you have no other bargaining chip besides before? Gu Yanci was stabbed until his face turned pale. He took a step closer and lowered his voice. I admit, I didn't tell you clearly about some things before. But I never wanted to harm you. Shen Yuan smiled. Do you think I still believe it? Do you believe Lu Chenzhou? At least he didn't pretend to be my lover and then stab me in the back. Gu Yanci's eyes darkened. He will just put a knife to your neck and force you to willingly walk into his cage. Shen Yuan's smile faded. This sentence touched his most sensitive place. Gu Yanci noticed it and immediately took advantage of the situation. Yuan, can't you see? Lu Chenzhou is not helping you at all. He is taking advantage of you when you are most vulnerable. The Shen group crisis, the marriage, the cohabitation, and the rings, which one was not arranged by him? Shen Yuan said nothing. Gu Yanci came closer. It doesn't matter whether you hate me or blame me, but at least I have known you for so many years. I know that you don't like to be controlled by others, and you don't like to be anyone's appendage. Lu Chenzhou cannot give you freedom. Shen Yuan suddenly raised his eyes. Then can you give it? Gu Yanci was at a loss for words. Shen Yuan said coldly, what you call freedom is to let me hand over Shen group, let me hide, let me know nothing, and finally let you share the Shen family. Gu Yanci's expression changed. I didn't. Have you? The evidence will speak for itself. Shen Yuan turned to leave, but Gu Yanci suddenly grabbed his hand. Yuan, you can't marry him. Shen Yuan turned around, a sudden chill rising in his eyes. Let go. Gu Yanci seemed to have been pushed to the limit, and his voice was no longer gentle. You are mine. Shen Yuan felt sick in his heart. This sentence had moved his heart in his previous life. When I listen to it again in this life, I just feel like shackles. Just as he was about to shake it off, a colder breath suddenly came from the balcony door. Lu Chenzhou stood there with a terrifying expression on his face. Gu Yanci. Gu Yanci turned around, but before he could speak, Lu Chenzhou had already walked over, grabbed his wrist, and pushed him away. Gu Yanci hit the railing next to him and looked ugly. Lu Chenzhou, who do you think you are? Lu Chenzhou ignored him and only looked at Shen Yuan's wrist. There was another circle of red. Shen Yuan felt nervous. He saw that Lu Chenzhou was really angry this time. Lu Chenzhou. He spoke, trying to calm him down. But the next second, Gu Yanxi sneered, "Why are you so anxious? Are you afraid that he will remember that the person he loved before was me?" The air solidified instantly. Shen Yuan's face darkened. Lu Chenzhou looked at Gu Yanxi, his eyes seemed to be frozen. He used to have bad eyesight. Shen Yuan. Gu Yanxi was angered by this sentence. "You." Lu Chenzhou suddenly turned around and raised his hand to clasp the back of Shen Yuan's neck. Before Shen Yuan could react, a piece of warmth fell on his lips. The whole world seemed to lose its voice at that moment. There was wind outside the terrace, music was playing inside the venue, and a livid-faced Gu Yanxi stood behind him. But Shen Yuan can't hear anything. All he felt was Lu Chenzhou's kiss. It's not rough, but it's extremely depressing and out of control. It was as if someone who had endured it for too long finally opened a crack, and then forcibly restrained himself the moment he touched him. Shen Yuan opened his eyes wide. He should push away. But Lu Chenzhou's palm was holding the back of his neck, and the other hand was weakly protecting his waist. It was clearly a declaration of sovereignty, but it did not really trap him. As long as he wants to withdraw, he can withdraw at any time. This realization made Shen Yuan's heart tremble. After a few seconds, Lu Chenzhou lets him go. Shen Yuan was breathing slightly and looked at him coldly. Lu Chenzhou. Lu Chenzhou whispered, "Sorry." He apologized too quickly. Shen Yuan, a mouthful of fire stuck in the throat. Gu Yanxi stood aside, his expression extremely ugly. Lu Chenzhou took Shen Yuan's hand and his tone returned to calm. "Excuse me." Shen Yuan wanted to shake it off, but held back when he saw the eyes of those in the venue who were attracted towards him. The two walked back to the venue. The flash comes on. After tonight, the whole town will know that Lu Chenzhou kissed Shen Yuan at the cocktail party. And Shen Yuan also knew clearly that this kiss was not just an act. At least not for Lu Chenzhou. On the way back, Shen Yuan didn't say a word. The air pressure inside the car was so low that the driver even breathed lightly. Lu Chenzhou sat next to him, resting his knuckles on his knees, without further explanation. This was what annoyed Shen Yuan the most. He did something disturbing, but he was as silent as a statue, as if as long as he didn't say anything, the matter would be swallowed up by the night. The car drove into the mid-levels villa. Shen Yuan got out of the car and walked upstairs. Lu Chenzhou followed behind him. After entering the master bedroom, Shen Yuan turned around and closed the door, but Lu Chenzhou raised his hand to block it. "Talk." Shen Yuan sneered, "Does Mr. Lu know how to talk now?" Lu Chenzhou looked at him. "I lost control just now." "I know. There won't be a next time." Shen Yuan became even angrier. "What makes you think that there will be no next time and it will be solved?" Lu Chenzhou fell silent. Shen Yuan took a step forward, his eyes cold and sharp. "Did you kiss me because Gu Yanxi provoked you? Because you were jealous? Or because you thought I was your fiancé now, so you had the right to do it?" "No." "What's that?" Lu Chenzhou's Adam's apple moved slightly. He looked at Shen Yuan, with some emotion so strong that it was almost painful. "Because I'm scared." Shen Yuan was startled. This was not the answer he expected. Lu Chenzhou whispered, "I heard him say that you were his, and suddenly I was afraid that you would be taken away by him again." "Again?" Shen Yuan caught that word immediately. Lu Chenzhou's eyes changed slightly. The room fell silent. Shen Yuan said word by word, "Lu Chenzhou, you just said, again." Lu Chenzhou did not answer. The emotion in Shen Yuan's heart, stirred by the kiss, instantly turned into alertness. "What on earth do you know?" Lu Chenzhou closed his eyes. "I can't say now." Shen Yuan smiled. He took a step back, and the wavering in his eyes completely turned cold. "So you still hide it from me?" "Shen Yuan. Don't call me." Shen Yuan pointed to the door. Get out. This time, Lu Chenzhou did not leave immediately. He looked at Shen Yuan as if he wanted to say something, but also as if he knew that what he said was useless. Finally, he whispered, "I'm sorry." After the door closed, Shen Yuan leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. The warmth of Lu Chenzhou still seems to remain on the lips. This made him even more irritated. He can handle Shen Mingyuan, he can handle Gu Yanxi, he can face the media and the board of directors. But he didn't know what to do with Lu Chenzhou. This man is dangerous, strong, and hides too much, yet he reaches out every time he is about to fall. The most terrifying thing is that Shen Yuan found that he did not completely reject the kiss. This realization kept him up all night. The next day, the kiss on the terrace at the reception became a hot search topic. In the photo, Lu Chenzhou is clasping the back of Shen Yuan's neck, and Shen Yuan is slightly raising his head. The two of them are standing at the intersection of night and lights. The picture is so ambiguous that it doesn't look like a contract marriage. The outside world completely believes that the marriage between Lu and Shen is not an empty shell. As a result, Shen Group's stock price rebounded again. Shen Yuan looked at the data with mixed emotions. His good sense knew that this would be good for Shen Group. But emotionally, he hated being pushed into a new public identity by a kiss. At noon, Lin Jiyue came to the Lu family to deliver materials. As soon as he entered the door, he looked at Shen Yuan with a half-smile. "Nice kiss." Shen Yuan raised his eyes coldly. "Are you very free?" Lin Jiyue immediately became serious. "I'm not idle. Chao Qi's testimony has been completed, and Shen Mingyuan won't be able to turn around in the short term. In addition, Qisheng Capital found something over there." Shen Yuan took the file. "Say, there is a fund behind Qisheng, and its source has many layers. In the end, it may be related to the Lu Group Overseas Fund." Shen Yuan's hand stopped as he was turning over the file. "Lu Group. It's Lu Group again." Lin Jiyue looked at his face and whispered, "Yuan, Lu Chenzhou may really be helping you, but the Lu family may not be clean." Shen Yuan was silent for a long time. "I know." He already knew it. It was just the kiss last night that he almost forgot about. Emotions outside of the contract are the easiest to make people lose judgment. And he couldn't afford to be wrong again. Shen Yuan starts checking Lu Group. Instead of checking Lu Chenzhou, check the relationship between Lu Group Overseas Funds and Qisheng Capital. This was a more subtle thread than Shen Mingyuan. Lin Jiyue used the resources of the law firm, and Zhou Jibai also revealed some directions that could be investigated intentionally or unintentionally. Shen Yuan knew very well that Zhou Jibai would not betray Lu Chenzhou, so those clues were mostly given with Lu Chenzhou's acquiescence. This made him feel more complicated. Lu Chenzhou concealed it while letting him go to investigate. It was like handing him the knife with his own hand, but refusing to tell him where the knife would stab. 3 days later, Lin Jiyue found an old surveillance video. Not from this life. It was the surveillance backup of a closed garage near the site of the car accident in the previous life. When Shen Yuan saw the file name, his fingertips instantly went cold. He was sitting in the Lu family's study room, staring at the computer screen, but didn't click on it for a long time. Lin Jiyue was silent for a moment on the other end of the phone. "Yuan, are you sure you want to watch it now?" Shen Yuan closed his eyes. "Send it to me." The video was only 3 minutes and 20 seconds long. The picture was very blurry. The rain was heavy, and the streetlights were blurred in the mist. Shen Yuan saw a familiar car lose control and run off the road and hit the guardrail. Even though he had been reborn, his body still instinctively froze when he saw that scene. His chest felt as if it were being strangled by an invisible seatbelt, and it became increasingly difficult to breathe. The time on the screen showed that 5 minutes after the car accident, a black car parked in the distance. Someone got out of the car. He could not see the man's face clearly. He could only see him holding a black umbrella and staggering toward the scene of the accident. Lu Chenzhou. Shen Yuan recognized him instantly. Not because the picture was clear, but because the figure completely overlapped with his last sight before death. Lu Chenzhou really went. Early earlier than the ambulance. Shen Yuan clenched the mouse so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The next second, the video jumped. 7 minutes were missing in between. When the screen was restored again, the ambulance and police had arrived. Lu Wenchuan was being supported by Zhou Jibai and standing in the rain, with half of his body covered in blood. Not Shen Yuan's blood. He had an injury on his arm. Shen Yuan's breath stopped. He never knew Lu Wenchuan was injured that night, too. The video ended. Shen Yuan sat there and didn't move for a long time. 7 minutes. The most critical 7 minutes disappeared. Someone deleted the middle scene. And that scene probably recorded the real controller of the car accident. There was a knock on the door. Shen Yuan did not respond. Lu Wenchuan opened the door and came in. When he saw the computer screen, his expression suddenly changed. Who gave it to you? Shen Yuan looked up at him. Your first reaction was not to ask if I was okay, but to ask who gave it to me. Lu Wenchuan froze. Shen Yuan stood up with a cold voice. So you have seen this surveillance video a long time ago. Lu Wenchuan did not deny it. Shen Yuan's eyes were slightly red, but he was not crying, but angry. Lu Wenchuan, where did you go in 7 minutes? Lu Wenchuan fell silent. You know that, right? I don't know the full answer. Then what do you know? Lu Wenchuan looked at him, his voice low and hoarse. When that piece of surveillance was deleted, someone inside Lu Group was involved. Shen Yuan's heart sank hard. Lu Group internal. These 4 words finally pushed the speculation that he had been unwilling to face directly to his eyes. Is it Lu Wenchuan? Lu Wenchuan did not answer immediately. Shen Yuan understood. He suddenly laughed. So you kept hiding it from me because you, the Lu family, are also in it. Shen Yuan. Isn't it? Lu Wenchuan looked at him, his eyes as dark as a heavy rain. Yes. One word, falling like a knife. Shen Yuan took half a step back. He thought he was calm enough, but when the truth was revealed, it still hurt so much that he could hardly stand still. It was not just Du Yanxi or Shen Mingyuan that killed him in his previous life. And the Lu family. And now, he is living under the same roof as the leader of the Lu family, wearing his ring, and even being kissed by him. How ridiculous. Shen Yuan closed his eyes. Get out. Lu Wenchuan stood there. Shen Yuan's voice trembled, but it was even colder. I don't want to see you now. Shen Yuan didn't leave the study all day. Lu Wenchuan did not come in again. In the evening, the housekeeper brought food to the door, but Shen Yuan didn't eat it. In the end, it was Shen Qingtang who called and pulled him out of the emotions caused by that period of surveillance. Let's meet. Shen Qingtang said. Shen Yuan looked at the name on the screen, his eyes moving slightly. Shen Qingtang is the daughter of Shen Mingyuan. After the bankruptcy of the Shen family in her previous life, she quickly went abroad and did not participate in the subsequent food sharing, nor did she help Shen Yuan. Shen Yuan hated her for a time, but later found out that Shen Qingtang was sent away before Shen Mingyuan's incident, and may not be aware of many things. In this life, she took the initiative to find him, which meant that there was a crack on Shen Mingyuan's side. Half an hour later, Shen Yuan met Shen Qingtang in a late-night cafe. She was wearing a black trench coat, her short hair was neat and tidy, and she looked more tired than Shen Yuan remembered. After my father was suspended from work, the family was in chaos. Shen Yuan sat down. So you are here to intercede on his behalf? Shen Qingtang smiled. Do I look that innocent? Shen Yuan did not answer the call. Shen Qingtang placed a USB flash drive on the table. This is a backup from the safe in my dad's study. I don't know the full contents, but I saw a few names. Shen Yuan looked at the USB disk and did not touch it immediately. Why give it to me? Shen Qingtang is silent for a few seconds. Because my dad is going to let me take part of the responsibility. Shen Yuan raised his eyes. Shen Qingtang's tone was calm, but there was an uncontrollable coldness in his eyes. He asked his lawyer to prepare a document saying that I had signed several contracts as the project leader. I did sign those contracts, but I didn't know that they were shell transactions. Shen Yuan understood. Shen Mingyuan, seeing that the situation is not good, even his own daughter is ready to push out to block the knife. You want me to protect you? Yes. Shen Xingtang said frankly, I will give you the information, and you will ensure that I will not be dragged into the water by my father. Shen Yuan leaned back in his chair. Do you think I will believe you? You don't need to trust me fully. Shen Xingtang said, you can check. After checking, you can decide whether to use me or not. This sentence sounds like the Shen family people. Be realistic, direct, and don't pretend to be extra affectionate. Shen Yuan picked up the USB flash drive. Do you know who is behind your dad? Shen Xingtang shook his head. I only know that he has been mentioning a person named Lu recently. Shen Yuan's heart sank. Lu Wenchuan? Shen Xingtang's eyes changed slightly, you know? Sure enough. Shen Yuan held the USB flash drive tightly. The line for Lu Wenchuan is getting clearer. But what follows is the inevitable shadow between Lu Chenzhou and the Lu family. Shen Xingtang looked at him and suddenly asked, Are you really going to marry Lu Chenzhou? Shen Yuan lowered his eyes. The agreement has been signed. An agreement does not equal a marriage. Shen Yuan smiled, you are sober. Shen Xingtang was silent for a moment. Yuan, I don't know what's going on between you and Lu Chenzhou. But my dad is afraid of him and afraid of you joining forces with him. This at least means that he is useful to you now. Useful. This is the most realistic judgment. This is also the reason why Shen Yuan chose this marriage in the first place. But now things are no longer just useful. Lu Chenzhou was involved in the truth about his death in his previous life, but he was saved again and again. Shen Yuan can calculate Shen Mingyuan and can counter Gu Yanxi, but cannot calculate Lu Chenzhou. It was late at night when he returned to the Lu family. There is a lamp left in the living room. Lu Chenzhou was sitting on the sofa with his untouched dinner in front of him. Hearing the sound, he looked up. Shen Yuan stood at the entrance and did not go in. The two looked at each other across the living room. In the end, Lu Chenzhou spoke first. Have you eaten? Shen Yuan fell silent. He had a lot to ask. I want to ask about Lu Wenchuan. I want to ask about monitoring. I want to ask about those 7 minutes in my previous life. But the first question Lu Chenzhou asked was whether he had eaten. This made Shen Yuan suddenly feel a little tired. No. Lu Chenzhou gets up. I make people hot. Shen Yuan looked at his back and suddenly spoke. Lu Chenzhou. Lu Chenzhou stopped. Shen Yuan asked in a low voice, Will you harm me? Lu Chenzhou turned around. His eyes were so heavy that he seemed to be holding all the unspoken words inside. No. Shen Yuan looked at him for a long time before saying, It's best. The USB flash drive handed over by Shen Xingtang contained an encrypted account book. Lin Jiyue took a whole night to crack. The ledger records many secret fund transactions of Shen Mingyuan in the past year, several of which eventually flowed to Qisheng Capital, and Qisheng Capital has an intersection with an overseas trust controlled by Lu Wenchuan. The evidence is not complete, but it is enough to determine the direction. Shen Yuan looked at the chain of funds, his heart felt cold. Lu Wenchuan is really in the game. And Lu Chenzhou always knew that someone in the Lu family was unclean. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Shen Yuan took the initiative to knock on Lu Chenzhou's study door. This is the first time since the surveillance incident that he took the initiative to talk to Lu Chenzhou about business. Lu Chenzhou was in a video conference, and when he saw him coming in, he turned off the microphone. What's wrong? Shen Yuan placed the ledger on his desk. Lu Wenchuan has financial transactions with Qisheng. Lu Chenzhou looked down. His expression wasn't surprising. Shen Yuan saw it. You do know. Lu Chenzhou closed the file. Before, there was only doubt. What now? I can confirm part of it. Shen Yuan stared at him, then what are you going to do? Don't touch him yet. Shen Yuan sneered, because he is your second uncle? Because there is not enough evidence. Lu Chenzhou said in a steady voice, if we move now, it will only cause him to cut off his tail and survive. Qisheng, the Gu family, and Shen Mingyuan will all be pushed out, and he himself may not be injured. Shen Yuan fell silent. He knew Lu Chenzhou was right. But knowing is one thing, accepting is another. He is eager for revenge, eager to uncover the truth, and eager to prove that he is no longer the person who was at the mercy of others in his previous life. And Lu Chenzhou is too calm. Calm as if his death was not part of the truth. Shen Yuan. Lu Chenzhou suddenly spoke, I don't want to let him go. Shen Yuan raised his eyes. Lu Chenzhou looked at him and said word by word, I want him to die more than you do. The coldness in this sentence is too strong. Shen Yuan was stunned. Lu Chenzhou rarely expresses his hatred. He is more accustomed to suppressing all emotions in action. But at this moment, the killing intent in his eyes was barely concealed. That's not a business competition. It's a personal grudge. Shen Yuan suddenly realized that Lu Wenchuan might not only be related to the Shen family, but also related to Lu Chenzhou's past. You and Lu Wenchuan. He killed my mother. Lu Chenzhou spoke calmly. But when Shen Yuan heard these words, his heart suddenly sank. Almost no one in the outside world dared to mention Lu Chenzhou's mother. Shen Yuan only knew that she had died unexpectedly in his early years. Lu Chenzhou had been taken back to the Lu family after that and had begun participating in Lu Group's power struggle. It turned out that it had not been an accident. The room was quiet for a long time. Shen Yuan finally asked in a low voice, why did you tell me? Lu Chenzhou looked at him. You said I wouldn't hide anything from you anymore. Shen Yuan felt a slight impact against his heart. This sentence is simple, but more effective than any explanation. He clenched his fingers and unclenched them. Then cooperate. Lu Chenzhou's eyes moved slightly. Shen Yuan pushed the ledger in front of him. Shen Mingyuan, Gu Yanxi, Qisheng, Lu Wenchuan, these lines cannot be drawn separately. You investigate your Lu group, I will investigate my Shen family, and we share information. Lu Chenzhou was silent for a moment. Okay. Shen Yuan reached out. This time it's not a marriage agreement, it's a revenge cooperation. Lu Chenzhou looked at his hand and finally took it. His palms were hot. Shen Yuan wanted to pull back, but was gently held by Lu Chenzhou. Not control. Like confirmation. Shen Yuan raised his eyes. Mr. Lu, I've held it for too long. Lu Chenzhou let go. Sorry. Shen Yuan turned around and left, and when he reached the door, he suddenly stopped. One more thing. Lu Chenzhou looked at him. Shen Yuan did not look back. I didn't eat last night, and it wasn't because of you. Lu Chenzhou was stunned for a moment. Shen Yuan said that and left. After the door closed, Lu Chenzhou sat there for a long time. After a while, he laughed softly. Very light. But Zhou Jibai, who had just opened the door and walked in, almost thought he was hallucinating. Mr. Lu? Lu Chenzhou put away his smile. Investigate Qisheng. Zhou Jibai looked at his expression and thought that Mr. Shen was indeed the only person in Lu Group who could make Mr. Lu change his mood. But he didn't say it. Because he still wants to live.